Han-Guang NPU, which is used for inference. So here is the comparison before we go ahead. So we have discussed Goya. We have discussed. We have mentioned T4. We know already a little bit about GPUs. This one we have not discussed. This is another startup. Now here you can see why I'm discussing this one, Han-Guang. So this is the first chip that Alibaba has designed, and this itself is very good. It is designed only in 12 nanometer. It is not even 7 nanometer. That means if they were to move to 5 nanometer and so on, that will be even much better results. So this is the results on ResNet 50. So please note down, IPS is the images per second. Okay. So that means if you use Han-Guang, you can compute so many images in each second. And this is the IPS per watt. That means for each watt of power that you consume, how many images can you process? That is 500 compared to just 150 for Goya, which is the closest competitor. And GPU, it is very poor figure. So that means it is like 10 times more energy efficient than the GPU. Okay, some information is not available, but here this is, it can. So if you remember in Goya, we showed that it can process 15,000 images in each second. Now here, this this figure of 7, this IPS per watt. This is under certain constraints. Or I will show you that part. So here the architecture is seemingly simple. It has only 4 cores. Okay, and 4 cores, they are connected with a ring bus. So that is the ring. It's like a ring. Okay, so that means if core 0 wants to communicate to core 2, there is no direct connection. Fine. So ring bus is okay for small number of cores, but when you increase the number of cores, then ring becomes a problem, right? Because if you remember the previous case which we had discussed, that was Grayskull. Okay, in Grayskull we had torus, and so in the torus, one what you call, one of the core is connected to all the 4 neighboring cores. Okay, we had a 2D grid of 120 cores. Every core was connected to all the 4 neighbors. And then the topmost core is connected to the lowermost core by that long link. But here it is just a ring bus. So even this core 0 is not directly connected with core 2. It is connected only to core 1 and core 3. So every core is connected to only 2 neighbors, not the 3 neighbors, only 2 neighbors. Now this is the overall chip, and this is the design of each core. Now here it also has the chip also has command processor, plus it has PCI Express. Now each core has a tensor engine, a pooling engine, and a memory engine. Plus it has local memory. Okay, it has a local memory. So if you see, like in Goya also we had something similar, right? We had that shared memory. Now here this local memory is 192 megabytes. Plus there is no DRAM. Okay, there is no DRAM. It relies only on the SRAM. So if you exceed the 192 megabyte capability or the capacity, then you have to use more than one Han-Guang chip. Fine. Now tensor engine, again, they don't have a lot of details available here. What is the type? But so also in this course, I have not discussed what is wait stationary, activation stationary, or output stationary. So these are some different architectures, different data flow architectures. So it has some optimizations for data reuse. Now it can do fused operations. So the whole point is usually after convolution layer we have batch normalization layers, then we have activation function. So all the layer it fuses, so that on a single data we perform all these layers instead of first completing the computations of one layer. for one data item, we'll do all the layers. Then we'll move to the second data item. Then we'll do all the layers. Then third data, do all the layers, and so on. So this is the fused. This is called layer fusion. This is called layer fusion. Now the design has only 4 cores. It can divide models among them. So see, the key idea here is that have only few cores. So that the key point here is that it should be able to work well with low batch size, even a batch size of 1. Okay, so Han-Guang is suitable for real-time workload that require minimum latency. So that means if your accelerator can work even with batch size of 1, that means you don't have to increase the batch size to achieve high throughput. That's what we'll show here. So if you remember in the, I will show that point also later. Let me just probably bring it up right now itself. So it was Goya presentation. Let me close. Okay, I will share whole of my screen because I want to show 2-3 things. Okay, here now. Okay, so you can see my screen. So if you remember this this slide, now here we showed that at the batch size of 12, Goya has this much throughput. That means it can do this much sentences and it takes this much latency. But if you go to higher batch size, although throughput improves, but latency also increases. We want latency to be low. Similarly for T4 GPU also. Okay, for T4 GPU, if you increase the batch size for T4 GPU, the throughput doesn't improve, only latency improves. That means it is not able to handle more than 12 batch size. Whereas here we will show you, let us come back to Han-Guang. Here, this is designed so that it can work well at any batch size. Now, its core computation unit is dot product unit. It does not use systolic array. Okay. So by using dot product, you can have higher MAC utilization, which reduces memory requirement. So if you remember in systolic array, we really needed large size matrices, right? If your systolic array is 128 cross 128, you need that 128 cross 128 matrix to be there. If your matrix is less than that, your systolic array is not fully utilized. But if you just have dot product units, that means just multipliers and adders. Even if your matrix size is smaller, you can use them because you will repeatedly map computations on them, on those multiplier and adder. Okay, so the whole point is, see, systolic array is good if your computation is always, if you have a lot of work to do, then systolic array is good. But if you have only small amount of work, then you should have smaller multiplier. That means just maybe just a few multipliers and adders, right? If your workload is smaller, you need smaller hardware. If you have high hardware, you also need a lot of work to do. Only then your hardware is very utilized. So here, because it has dot product units, it has good MAC utilization. So now let me also show you how this was a problem in TPU version 1. So here, if you see here, right? You remember? So here, oh no, not so. Here, yeah, here, if you see, a lot of unused MACs were there. 23% MACs were unused. That's why, although its peak performance it can potentially give you is very, very high, it actually gives you very low performance. Only for this CNN 0 it gives you high performance, but for others, because it doesn't use lot of MACs because of the systolic array, and that was one reason why in TPU version 2 and 3 they reduced the systolic array size from 256 cross 256 to 128 cross 128. Right, from 256 cross 256, you have only 128 cross 128. And if you go to GPU, the tensor core, it is only 4 cross 4 matrix multiplication. So that is very, very small. So when you have very, very small, your utilization improves, although you have to keep on feeding that. But the design challenges may increase and so on. Now here, so because it has very good MAC utilization, it allows the chip to operate entirely without any external DRAM. Okay, you can just work with 192 megabyte of SRAM. So it achieves higher MAC utilization than even GPUs. And now, I mean, we don't have more details or more proof than to support, but I mean, they are saying it, so I've shown you how I can't prove it. Now it can accelerate convolution and matrix multiplication. So here, that's what this convolution and matrix multiplication, it can do both. Okay. And it can also support inverse convolution, whole convolution, 3D convolution, interpolation, ROI, extraction. Okay. So what they are, we have not discussed in this course. Now, in addition to int8 and int16 quantization, it can also cover FP16 and BF16 vector calculation. So although you will get good throughput with this, right? You will get good accuracy with this. And remember, during the training, you cannot work with integer. You have to use either FP32 or BF16, but at least FP16. Okay, so this point, please remember, I will ask this question in the exam. Can you do training with integers? No, you can't. You must have floating point numbers. Either FP32 or at least BF16, because the range of FP16 is very, very small, right? So because the range of FP16 is so small, you will get easily overflow. That will lead to a lot of errors. That's why you need a BF16 or FP32. Now it has a CISC-like instruction set. If you remember, Brainwave also has CISC. TPU also uses CISC. Here, this also uses CISC. Now, again, if your workload is larger than that, then you use multiple chips. Now, here, please, another point you can observe is that here there is some optimization for sparsity is there, but only sparsity of weights, not sparsity of activations. So, what is the sparsity? Let me open one or two presentations where the. So here. Yeah, this was the idea here. Like this is the example of like sparse matrices. So if your weight is like this, then it's called a sparse matrix. Okay, and if you are multiplying, weight with activation. So the point is, if weight is 0, then Han Guang chip will detect it. That weight is 0. Then it will not do any computation. Okay, it will not do any computation. We will save the computation upward. Let's see if you know that if you are multiplying A with B, and if A is 0, why we should do computation, right? We don't need to do any computation because the result we know is 0. Okay. Is it clear? Any questions based on this? So this is called sparsity optimization. So please keep on observing which of the processors have it, which of the processors don't have it. But at least this Han Guang has it. Here, although I mean, if activation is 0, it will not be able to detect that. But if weight is 0, it can detect that and avoid the computation. Now it has some pooling engine. So we don't understand much here. So it can do FP16, BF16, int8, and BF16. So internally, yeah, I will come to you. Okay. So 1 o'clock. So here this is the local LM is the local memory. Now here it internally it operates in FP19, and once the results are obtained, it converts it into FP16, BF16, and so on. Because because FP19 is their internal proprietary data format. Probably they found out that okay, FP19 works better. But for the external word, for corresponding to the external word, they translate into FP16, BF16, and so on. Fine. So int P is, I think, interpolation, and here pooling unit is there. Now this is the memory engine. So here memory engine can adjust arrangement of data. So in this course, we have not discussed what is the effect of data layout changes. Okay, but one small example we have discussed is the tiling. Right, during the tiling, we showed that if we store the data in row major order versus column major order, then number of cache misses could be different. So that was just a small example, but there are more complicated examples. But here it shapes the data if required to the matrix transpose and so on, or flatten the image to improve the memory access efficiency. Now it has this 192 megabyte on-chip SRAM. So how is it arranged? So here, out of the 192 megabyte, each core has 48 megabyte. Right? This is the 48 megabyte. Now here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 12, 16. Okay. Now it has, so from this 384 KB, where is the 3? Yeah, here. This is, so each of them, this is 384 KB. Okay, this is 384 KB. Now, from this, how do you get 48 megabyte? Let us see. So, okay, so this is the in each core. So this is 16, right? And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 here. Okay, so 8 into 16, right? So you have eight such blocks. 1 block, 2 block, 3 block, 4 block, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you have 8 blocks. In each block, you have what you call 16 modules. 16 modules. This each module is 384 KB, and each module is 384 KB. So total, you get 48 megabyte in each core. And because there are 4 cores, you multiply 48 by 4, so you get 192 megabytes. And apart from sparsity, right? So whenever the weight matrix is sparse, it stores them in a compressed manner. Plus, it also does quantization. Okay, so here it uses FP24. So again, see here they were using FP19. That's very strange. And here they are using FP24. In FP24, there is 1 bit for sine, 8 bit for exponents, and 15 bits for Mantissa. Now, can you tell me what would be the reason behind this? What can you make any observation here? Why this choice of, see, sine bit has to be just 1. But why this choice of number of exponent bits and number of Mantissa bits? Can you think what would be the reason behind this? Or what is the advantage of this choice? Okay, so FP32, how many exponent bit does that have? Gaurav, Ranjan, how many exponent bits are there in the FP32?
Sir, it's 8, sir. 23, 7,
okay. 8, you're right. And how many exponent bits are here?
Here we have 8, sir.
Here. So now you think what is the point of having 8 here? What is the benefit of that? How does it help? We did not reduce it, right? We kept 8. I mean, we went from FP32 to FP24, but we did not reduce the number of exponent bits. What is the benefit of that? We reduced the Mantissa bits, fine, but we did not reduce the exponent bits. So what is the benefit of that?
To increase the range, sir.
We don't want to change the range.
Very good. Yeah, we don't want to sacrifice the range. It is similar to what the decision we have made in BF16. Okay, in BF16 also we kept the number of exponent bits is same as 8. We just sacrifice the Mantissa bits. Similarly here, it is like we are sacrificing Mantissa bits, but we are not sacrificing the exponent bits so that we can maintain the range. Okay, so now you can see that sometimes if you don't want to use FP32, you may not want to use BF16. Then it is a in between choice. Okay, because having too few Mantissa bit also is not very good, right? You lose a lot of precision. That's why it's like a trade-off. Neither it is BF16 nor it is FP32, it is in between, exactly, like between 16 and 32, you have 24. And all the 8 bits that you have removed from FP32, they are all into Mintesa. That means you have just removed 8 Mintesa bits. Now, this is how you map the tasks. So if your task is small, then you can just do 4 tasks at the same time on this Hangwan. Have 1 copy here, 1 copy here, 1 copy here, 1 copy, because the model is very small. Each of the tasks can fit within 48 megabyte of memory. Similarly, or you can run different tasks, like one of them can be CNN, one of them can be RN, and one of them can be like BERT. Now, if the model is large, I mean, let us see first this one. If the model is very, very large, it can't even fit 192 megabytes. Then have one layer on chip 0, another layer on chip 1, another layer on chip N. So see, this is especially important because it doesn't have DRAM. So very soon you will hit the 192 megabyte limit. Then you have to run it like this. And if your intermediate model, which are neither extremely large, neither too small, then you can have layer level pipeline. That means here, total all the 4 layers put together, their budget is less than 192 megabyte. That means their memory requirement is less than 192 megabyte. Then you can use this approach. Or if you have like this, either you can use this approach, or you can have some of the weights stored in this core, 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 and then the layers can operate and fetch, because not all the weights can fit in this course memory, so you can fetch it from another course memory. And this could be hybrid parallelism, where you can have some copies. This is the copy 0, copy 1, and some of the layers are actually new. Some of them are just repeat because you want to do patching, and some of them are just new copies. Okay, so the whole the point is, you have certain hardware, you have certain application. Depending on how large the hardware is, how large the application is, you can map it, and either do batching so that you are able to process more images. But if your workload is very, very large, you may need more chips, or you may have to you may have to run one layer on one core, another layer on another core. So this is the implementation. Again, this is one more comparison. We already seen one comparison. This is Huawei's thing. Here now another thing is this is the peak tops. Okay, so this one question I will give either in the homework or exam is, what is the difference between tops? Okay, this is the tops. This was IPS. Here, this was IPS. Both are metrics of performance. What is the difference between tops and IPS? Tops is tera operations per second, or you can call it like teraflops. Teraflops or teraops. Whenever we are using the word flop, that means it's a floating point operation. Whenever we are saying ops, it could be even integer operation. Okay, so that is number of operations per second. This is IPS. Now you know the full form of IPS. Now think what could be the difference between them. What could be the correlation between them? What is the difference, and do they correlate with each other?
Sir, an instruction can have 3 or 4 operations, like fetch operation separately, execute.
No, it's not about that. It's not about that. Yes. Hemkant, Subham, Vikas, Priyansh, Akhil. Yeah.
So tops is at a basic level. Like it's representing the operations, while images per second is like the whole image. So like
you're close. Yeah, you're close there. Yeah, very close. Okay, so let me explain. See, tops give you that given the hardware, how many operations can it perform? That means how many multiplier adders does it have? What is the frequency? That will decide the number of operations it can do. Okay, and images per second is for a specific CNN, which is ResNet. That means if you use ResNet, which has a certain image size, then how many images can you process with that ResNet. If you change the image size, suppose your image size is half, probably your IPS could double. Right? If your ResNet, if instead of suppose CNN, suppose you use MLP or some other neural network model or some other model like maybe KNN or any other machine learning model, that may be able to process maybe half the images or more the number of images, or maybe just 10 images, because it doesn't utilize the hardware very well. It just gets stuck on memory. Okay, so TOPS is just what is the raw hardware. That means, like, suppose this institute, it has, you know, it has suppose 20 faculty members, so you can teach 20 courses. But suppose somebody says you teach this, suppose this degree. Now that degree may need suppose fashion designing. We don't have fashion designing course, so we can't offer that course because we are stuck. Just one resource is making it stuck. Okay, so image IPS is the image per second. That's a throughput for a particular image size for a particular neural network. Okay, that means for a particular workload, what is the throughput? And TOPS is what is the compute capability? How many raw number of computation can you do? Now, instead of neural network, you may do some other computation. You may do scientific computation. You may do, you know, suppose just addition of some other, like, molecular level simulations. For different applications, the TOPS is tied to that machine because it is fixed, but your images per second or your sentences per second or your simulations per second, all that may change depending on what workload you have. Okay, so is it clear? I hope understood. TOPS is for the hardware, and throughput, which is expressed here in terms of seconds per second, sentence per second or image per second, that depends on what is the workload you have. Okay, let us go forward. So here, that 78,000, that was the IPS. That means given the ResNet and certain image size, which is not mentioned here, it can process this many images per second. And here, this is the 825 is the performance, peak performance you can give. So now, assuming you can have 100% utilization, right? Now you remember the arithmetic intensity. That factor comes in. So then it can do 825 tera operations per second. Now here it can do only 130. Here it can do 125. This can do 512. This can do 1250. This is the frequency. That means, so now another thing you observe is that frequency is kept low on purpose, right? Because the frequency is kept low, it's all about saving energy. Okay, the TDP is also not very high, just 280, which is comparable to this GPU. Area very reasonable, 700, and it is designed with TSMC 12 nanometer. Okay. Now, this is the most important thing, which is currently I could not find in any other accelerator. This is very unique. So here it has high performance mode. So if you see from the previous slide, this 700 is the maximum frequency it operates in. And now, if you remember, we have discussed that slides on DVS, I mean, dynamic voltage scaling, frequency scaling, and DVFS, voltage frequency scaling. So all that we have discussed. So here it can configure both frequency and voltage. Okay, so we have discussed DVFS, and this is the chip which actually realizes it. Here it has performance mode where the frequency is 700. Now here, after that, you can go low in the frequency. After that, you can also reduce the voltage. But what is the voltage that they have not shown? Fine, you understand the point, right? I mean, frequency they have shown that, okay, we can reduce the frequency from this to this. But what is the voltage they reduce? That they have not shown. But definitely, this low power mode means they are also reducing the voltage. Okay, between this and this, you are reducing the voltage. That's why the performance is coming down, and that's why the power is also coming down. Okay, so the whole point is, if you want to use it in the data center, use it in the high performance mode. If you want to use it for edge devices, use the low power mode, where the power consumption comes down to just 25. Okay, is it clear? Although your performance will also be hit, but that's fine because, for example, if you're running it on the drone does not need to be as efficient as a data center server. Okay, so any questions here? So you get a whole spectrum of, okay, here we have very high performance, but at the cost of high power. And here we have lower performance, but we also save power. Okay, this table I have already shown. Previously, it was for kind of appetizer, just to show how good, why I'm discussing Han Guang. So here you can see IPS is very, very high. And because IPS is very, very high, but the power consumption is low, that's why peak efficiency is very, very high. That means for each watt of power that you consume, you can process 500 images. Okay, now let us compare it to GPU. So Titan RTX has Turing architecture, which is very, very latest or very, very recent architecture. It has a peak in terms of TOPS, that means it can do maximum 261 tera operations per second, whereas Han Guang can do 825 tera operations per second. Okay, so this is the GPU that they have taken because Turing is very recent. Now on ResNet 50, Han Guang achieves its peak performance even with the batch size of 1. So this is one of the key advantage of Han Guang, that it can work with batch size of 1. So I will show that results. I think first let us see this, then I will come back to that slide. So here this is the result with NVIDIA T4. Okay, I think no. Let us first discuss that. There is no. Okay, so on ResNet 50, Han Guang achieves its peak performance even at a batch size of 1. Whereas Titan RTX is much slower for real-time inference latency and has a very worse latency. Plus, the GPU requires high bandwidth DRAM to compensate for low on-chip memory. So because GPU has very small on-chip memory, right? Let me show that figure. Again, like this, you will have to go back and forth to fully understand. And you should not forget the previous case value. So here, now can you see how much is the GPU on-chip memory from this? Can anybody tell me? What is the on-chip memory of GPU here? Anyone? So are you able to see my screen, right? What is the from this? Just close it. So please tell me what is the on-chip memory here for Titan RTX? Yeah, 18 MB register file. Yeah, here they have excluded the size of L1 cache, L2 cache. They are just measuring the register file size. So here it has chip memory only 18 megabytes, right? And it has, of course, DRAM, which can give you high amount of DRAM capacity. But if you just talk in terms of on-chip memory, so here GPU has a very small on-chip memory. That's why it has to rely on high bandwidth DRAM. That means GDDR or HBM. Whereas Han Guang relies only on SRAM, it doesn't have DRAM. Okay, so now the benefit of GPU is that if your model is large, it can fit in DRAM. Right? So ResNet 50 is a small model. That's why Han Guang is good, which is okay for us because Han Guang is for inference. But if your model were to be very, very large, then GPU will get the advantage. Why? Because for Han Guang, you will have to use multiple chips. Okay? For Han Guang, you will have to use multiple chips. So that's why this will become like a bottleneck. But GPU, everything you can run on the same GPU, store it in the DRAM and fetch it here, do the computation. But for Han Guang, you will have to store it, then it will get transferred through PCI Express bus. Okay, so you understand the plus and minus. The plus is that because it does not have DRAM, if the model can fit in the SRAM, then SRAM access is very, very fast. Okay, but if it doesn't fit in SRAM, then because there is no DRAM, you will have to use multiple Han Guang chips. Then it becomes slow. Okay, this arrangement provides more storage for large models, and although they have similar die area and power. Okay, so if you see from here, Titan RTX, it has a power consumption of 280 watts, right? It is a power consumption of 280 watts, and RTX, this Han Guang also has 280 watts. Yeah, 280 watts. So that is comparable. Okay. Now now another point is the batching independent performance. That's what I wanted to show. So here, if you see at the batch size of 1, it has a latency of 0.11 millisecond on ResNet 50. And even at the batch size of 128, it has the same latency. That is very, very good. Okay. Now, if you see Habana, here at the batch size of 1, it has a latency of 0.2 millisecond. At batch size of 128, latency increases 5 times. Throughput also improves. Okay, but it doesn't become as high as that is the honeycomb. Now, here for the NVIDIA T4 GPU, the latency here was 0.93. Now it has become 24 milliseconds. Okay, that means how much? More than 25 times increase in the latency. Just so the point is, it gives you very good performance irrespective of the batch size, right? And it also gives you in the performance mode, it gives you high amount of throughput. So best latency, that means at the least latency, you get the highest throughput. Plus, there is no drop in the performance on changing the batch size. This is very, very interesting. Because usually there is a trade-off between batch size and performance. Any questions till this point? So through this, I'm trying to explain what are the trade-off or what are the characteristics of a good accelerator. It should give you good performance regardless of the batch size. And at the higher batch size, you should not lose throughput. I mean, you should not increase the latency. Now, this is very, very most interesting part. So, see, previously they were using GPU. Okay, and they replaced it with their NPU. So here, this NPU is the Hanguang NPU. Okay. This is Hanguang. So now this is CV is the computer vision, this is the recommendation models. Now instead of using this 2 T4 GPU or 8 T4 GPU, they replaced it with that means they replaced the GPU with the Hanguang NPU. Fine. And here they did not even need to use all the 4 cores. They just use 3 cores in each NPU. Here they used just one Hanguang with all the 4 cores. And how much money they have saved. So here for recommendation for this CV4, they saved 87% money. Here they saved 56% money. Here they use 41% money. TCO is the total cost of ownership. That means including both purchase and operation. Right? When you purchase, you spend some money, and when you operate it, you have to pay. You have to spend like software purchase cost, licensing cost, and electricity bill, cooling bills. So instead of purchasing GPU from some other company, they design their own NPU. So a lot of the money of purchase was saved, although they may have to hire some engineers and so on. So now, but what is the benefit? They save a lot of money in the operation. Overall, half the money is saved. That means all the data center expenses they were having from 2 billion, suppose it comes to 1 billion. That means like half. It's a huge improvement. So now you can see compared to using GPU, what is the benefit of moving to accelerators? You can save a lot. You can do a lot of optimization. Now here is the real life applications they have used in the city brain. So in the smart city project that they had in Hangzhou, previously they were using GPU. So they needed 40 GPUs. Okay, and every GPU was taking 300 millisecond latency. And for every route, it was consuming 2.8 watts. Whereas here it takes only 1 watt. Its latency is much less, and instead of 40 GPUs, now they need only 4 Hanguang chips. It processes video feed in the real time for managing the traffic. Okay, now here one more example is that for pedestrian detection, a 4-core Hanguang can support 100 channel video. That means 100 cameras are there, you can support all of them. Whereas which is 4 times better than the mainstream GPU, which can only support 25 channels. Okay, so now you see what is the advantage of using designing the accelerators compared to just using GPU. Initially, of course, you will have to design all of that, validate it, get it fabricated, and so on. But once you design it, it pays you off. That's why Google did it. That's why Microsoft did it. And other companies are doing it. So this is the reference.